Thank you, thank you, thank you. Welcome to Real Talk with Rashad. I'm Rashad Watson, the guy who has a million questions to ask, but will I find the answers? I'll show you the real world from the cropped fakes, the cold truth and the hot takes, from movies to politics, from pop culture to your daily inspiration. Be informed, entertained, and authentically you. Real talk, let's get into it. Hey everyone, it's Rashad Watson. Welcome back to another episode of Real Talk with Rashad. Today I plan on talking about voting. I want to make this into two different parts at least. I know I'm going to be talking about it later in the future as well, but I wanted to dissect this topic because I knew that it was so important for my generation in particular to understand the importance of voting. I want to say that voting is something that is talked about typically during election season. News coverage is all about elections, who's running, the numbers, who's actually getting people to vote. You see all these celebrities campaigning or giving people an incentive to go out, register, and vote. Now, there are different laws, it's a state by state thing on the requirements and eligibility to vote. And I think that you should really understand what that looks like in your own state. Who is allowed to vote and who cannot vote, and why that's really important. Voting is a fundamental right. Is it? No, it actually isn't. You see, I'm sure you know because we've all taken US history that many people were denied the right to vote. I want to put quotation marks on right because it was just the way of the land. And we all know, well, I hope so, that Black people in this country cannot vote. Women in this country cannot vote. They legally could not vote. Black people, as you know, could not legally vote because they were legally considered property. We have definitely come a long way in regards to voting, making sure that people have different ways to vote by in mail or in person, making sure that you're registering in time. Representation is so important because we get to see people who look just like us to represent us, to represent the changes that we want to make for all. And when you have a particular person or a particular image, and that is considered your representation across the board, it subconsciously invalidates the experiences and the lifestyles of others who are also Americans. So, yes, I'm referring to a white male, a straight white male running the country. I want to say that it's really important to focus on the national level of voting, voting for president, seriously important. But I think that especially people in my generation need to focus on the state and local level of voting. Now, honestly, can you tell me who the mayor of our city is? Can you tell me who the governor is? How many state representatives do we have? Who are they? Can you name two people in the state senate of Nebraska? Just two. Just two. But then again, it's like, why do you care? Why should we care? Because you see that your individual life is not drastically changing or really seeing much change by who we elect into office. And that is a part of the problem. Marginalized communities who are trying to uplift themselves and their families. We aren't seeing that because the people that we elect already don't live those experiences, but not saying that they need to. But we notice that change is not happening, no matter if there's a Democrat or a Republican in office. Well, here's the thing. When you have Democrats and Republicans who are going back and forth and they want to vote on party affiliation and not necessarily what they stand for, that is problematic as well. You see, when you're voting, you initially vote for your own interests, right? You vote for people who believe in the same things you believe or who see the changes that you see. There's nothing wrong with that. But that shouldn't be your sole reason of voting, especially on a national level. Think about the people who are directly affected by legislation that's put into place by our government. Think about the marginalized communities who stay marginalized. Ugh. And you see, that's the thing. That's the thing. That's the thing. Earlier, I said how we have definitely made improvements for people to have access to voting, to making sure that people are able to go out and vote. However, still to this day, in certain states, there is legislation that is trying to pass into law that's suppressing the right to vote. And of course, in marginalized communities, they just so happen to be in marginalized communities. I mean, we still have representatives not denouncing slavery. You see, in state laws, slavery is still legal. But let's also make it known that slavery is still legal federally in the Constitution. You see, people like to use the 13th Amendment, but they don't read it in its entirety. And I think it says one thing when, well, we don't really enforce what's in there, or we don't mean that literally. Or what's the point of making a change? It's not harming anyone. You are enabling that behavior. You are enabling that type of atmosphere that suppressed us as Black people and as other marginalized groups still to this day. In the 21st century, we see it often. There really isn't much of a difference between now and 30 years ago. If you really look into the laws, if you really look into the murders of Black men and women, or when you look into the housing discrimination for Black couples and Black people, the United States is still heavily segregated. And it's set up by design. This entire injustice system is set up by design. You see, the system was never broken, it was always fixed this way. It was designed for Black people to be inferior. It was designed for Black people to not be educated, to be locked up, to continue to be treated as slaves and work free labor to make profits for the ones who are holding them down. It's the same thing, but it's disguised. But see, I don't know if some people are ready to have that conversation because this topic is about voting. But the thing is, that's why voting is so important, especially on a local level. Conversations need to be had, especially my generation, about who we elect into office, why we are electing them into office, what we truly stand for, and asking questions. Asking questions if you don't understand something and not just going by something just because someone told you to. I didn't sit here and say who I voted for. Now, it may seem pretty obvious based on what I'm telling, but that should mean to you, coming from a Black man in America with the experiences that I have and what my people have faced in this country, that's something that you should open your eyes, open your ears, listen, and watch. Pay attention, learn something, understand someone else's experiences and lifestyle and how this country has treated them. It's not always about you. It's not always about your self interests when it comes to voting. Think about the person who doesn't believe in the same thing you believe in. You never know how it's going to affect them. Don't think because something doesn't immediately affect you when you vote that it's okay. Someone else's problem is their own problem. I want to end this episode by saying that representation and voting matters of all ages. Know who is in charge. Know who is in office. Understand what it takes to get someone there. Understand the power that your vote has on everyone. Because if you don't, you are perpetuating the problem without truly understanding how. And it's your job to change that. You want changes too, right? Come to the table. Speak your truth, but also be willing to listen and learn. That was this week's episode of Real Talk with Rashad. Stay tuned for next time, and thank you for listening.